Hello, everyone. Have you ever thought how culture plays a vital role and impacts on the health of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people? If so, today we will discuss the health literacy in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders relating to diabetes mellitus in remote areas of Australia. In this presentation, you will learn the culture that Indigenous Australians are embracing and appreciate on how their way of living is. First, Dipti Pillay will discuss the link between culture and health in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. Then I will identify and explain the social determinants of health that contributes to the development of diabetes mellitus. Lastly, Arya will critically examine on how nurses deliver culturally and competent and safe practice towards Indigenous Australians. Before we start, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and pay our respects to the elders past, present, and future, for they hold the memories, traditions, culture, and hope of Indigenous Australians. To give you an overview of our presentation, our objectives are as follows. First, to discuss the link between culture and health in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. Second, is to identify and explain the social determinants of health that contributes to the development of diabetes mellitus. And lastly, is to critically examine on how nurses deliver culturally competent and safe practice towards Indigenous Australians. And now I will give you Dipti Pillay to continue the presentation, and she will talk about the link between culture and health in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander.
Thank you, Christine. Now I'll begin with a brief description of Kiwikura community. Kiwikura is one of the most remote community in the world, located in the Gibson Desert in Western Australia, which is 700 kilometers to the west of Alice Springs. Kiwikura is home to some 150 residents. Cultural activities are of great importance in the lives of these residents. Aboriginal people from this region were amongst the last in Australia to encounter with white people and were living a traditional lifestyle up to 1950s and 1960s. Thus, they have an intimate knowledge of their country and continue to pass this knowledge on to younger generations. These people had been moved to Papunya in the late 1950s and 60s, but returned to Kiwirkura to live permanently on their traditional land, which is a part of following Kurunpa spirituality. That states to live in traditional land. Now, here is a video which describes the spirituality and the belief of oneness in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders.
Everything living is family. The trees are our family, same with the kangaroos, emus, and all the other animals that live with us. Growing up with the oldies, our parents and grandparents said we are connected to everything else, and the proof of that is being alive. Being alive connects you to every other living thing that's around you. Your spirit, your psychic, your physical, your mental, you're all connected with other living forms. Living in the bush gives you a confidence of life that you can never be trained into because it's so much a natural part of you. You're communicating with everything, the wind, the trees, the flowers, the grass, and every action is an action of beauty and an awareness and like, hello, how are you today? It's that niceness, that connection that makes you feel so good.
To continue, the fascinating thing about the Kiwikuran community is they spend their time in collecting bush foods, hunting, cooking, and eating guanas. In relation to diabetes, An Indigenous Women's Program was initiated where an educator in professional development and life skills expert went in Kirikura community which aimed to empower women in remote communities and help them develop a recipe book focusing on healthy living, budget recipes beneficial to people with diabetes as opposed to buying chips and drinks. Now, I would discuss about the link between the culture and health among Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. Before that, let's watch a video on how important is culture in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders.
Culture is real important to us. Culture, you can't leave your culture. Culture is on the front, always. Culture, you won't lose yourself. Culture, you won't lose all the land. We have to bring back our culture, how it was before in the first place, how our foremothers have, our forefathers have walked, how they've eaten, how they had their diet that was healthy, how they were very strong men and very strong women. You have our culture, and knowing your culture and being strong in culture, it also helps people be healthy. It helps them live life well and be strong with what they do. Because if you've got a healthy culture, you've got a healthy body.
So, as we saw, culture describes the particular way of life of a group of people as they are living today. It includes their beliefs, values, philosophies, their stories, myths, languages, traditions, lifestyles, etc. And Aboriginal health is defined as not just the physical well being of an individual, but the social, emotional, and cultural well being of the community. Australian Aboriginal cultures are the oldest living cultures, as the word Aboriginal means the first or the earliest known. The rich cultural practices, knowledge, systems, and cultural expressions of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander are a source of great strength, resilience, and pride, as well as fundamental to Indigenous health, social, and emotional well being. Their culture also does dreaming, a spiritual practice which each person of Aboriginal has. Their dreaming represents their identity and spirituality. Aboriginals believe on land ownership, an expression that they own a land, a reason as to why Aboriginals prefer to stay on remote areas without enough access of health resources because they value land ownership, feel connected, and has the relationship to all living things such as tree, flowers, animals, grass, etc. Whereas social isolation and destruction of indigenous culture result in ongoing grief, poor health that can cause depression, which is one of the significant cause for diabetes. For example, experiences of stolen generations. In contrast, remote areas, diabetes is twice as prevalent among indigenous people as it is in urban indigenous people, and it is extremely high in Torres Strait Islanders. Furthermore, living in remote areas and cultural beliefs has disadvantages such as lack of housing, health services, diabetes management services, and job opportunities, and unwanted fears and misperceptions that could lead harm, which could lead to psychological insulin resistance, thus causing ill health. Although there are some disadvantages living in remote areas, due to the cultural beliefs, there were studies that found that communities where traditional languages and cultural practices are valued and maintained are less likely to be obese, hence less likely to have diabetes. According to Department of Health 2013, land is central to well-being, and if harmonies of these interrelations are disrupted, ill health will persist. The Bridging Them Home and Deaths in Custody reports demonstrated the devastating impact that fractured culture had in Indigenous Australians, and the importance of valuing culture helped in healing this damage. In conclusion, The strengthening of indigenous culture is a strategy to improve Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health, thus holding enormous potential in contributing to closing the gap outcomes. Now I would pass on and Christine would talk about the social determinants of health among Aboriginals and Torres Strait Islanders.
Thank you, Depti. Now, I will be talking about the social determinants that influence the health of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, leading to diabetes in remote areas. Okay, so social determinants of health among Aboriginals and Torres Strait Islander are conditions in which they are born, grow, live, work, and age. These situations can be economic and socio-economic, and it plays an impact towards Indigenous Australians' health. Here are the following social determinants of health. First is the lifestyle, which includes access to healthy foods and lower physical inactivity. They are not involved in any physical activities, as we all know. That can be in a form of home exercise or a simple dancing programs and even swimming that can enhance their energy levels and makes their muscle works and burn body calories. Another lifestyle factor is the high fats that is stored among Aboriginal women's body. Indigenous Health Reviews 2016 states that 75% of the Aboriginal women carry too much fat around their abdomen rather than hips and thighs, and this is a substantial risk factor for type 2 diabetes. Then, still a part of lifestyle factor is their addiction to drugs, alcohol misuse, and habits of smoking, which they are regularly doing, which relieves their stress and feeling of being bored and lack of enthusiasm. The second social determinants of health is education. The relationship between education and health relates to the economic opportunities linked with literacy. Poor education and literacy are linked to poor health status and affect the capacity of people to use health information. According to Social Determinants of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Health Forum Report and Recommendations 2016, there is an evidence that those with higher educational attainment are more likely to engage in cultural activities, which in turn promotes health and helps Indigenous Australians to become aware of diabetes, how it develops, and how it can be prevented. In addition, if they have knowledge about diabetes, they will surely know on what the nutrients are required to sustain the body and have healthy choice of foods. In relation to their culture, they also embrace PIR or psychological insulin resistant thinking, which is contradicting to the fact knowledge. PIR, as being mentioned previously by Depti, it means that they have the doubt to use insulin or any injections as a diabetes treatment because of their fears that it will only cause harm to their body, causing death. The third social determinants of health is the type of housing the Indigenous Australians are living. Living in a poor quality and unsecure housing can be associated with poor health. Stress related to overcrowding and difficulty in accessing house can likely affect health. And on the situations of rundown housing, it is linked to poverty, and poverty contributes to the spread of communicable diseases. Transport is the fourth determinants of health among Indigenous Australians. This includes social support, access to healthcare services, and facilities. This means that the availability of healthcare services such as doctors, hospital facilities, and the stock of medications has a great impact to their health. Lastly is employment. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, as we all know, were left behind when it comes to job opportunities and work experiences. So most of them are unemployed, and this results to poorer income and failure to meet their healthcare needs and healthy lifestyle. As we can see here from the figure, it demonstrates the healthy gap in a snapshot of age-adjusted incidences. And based from this graph, diabetes occupies 3.3 times higher, which ranks as the second age-adjusted incidence among Indigenous Australians' health gap snapshot. This graph provides a powerful vision of how many times sicker Indigenous Australians are in range of measures when compared to the rest of Australian community. The links between health literacy and diabetes is that the higher the number of Indigenous Australian who are educated and has the knowledge, the greater is the chance of lifestyle risk factor reduction in areas such as smoking and drinking. There is some evidence that those with higher educational attainment are more likely to engage in cultural activities, which in turn promotes health. So, as a conclusion of this social determinants presentation, um, the social determinants of health have really a strong, great impact towards the health of Indigenous Australians. And now I will refer you to Arya to elaborate further on how nurses deliver culturally competent and safe practice towards Australians.
Now, here I'm gonna talk about culturally competent and safe nursing practice. As we are all aware, people who belongs to same culture have a same system of shared understanding of war, actions, beliefs, and values. These understanding are acquired in the process of growing. Health workers such as nurses need to consider those cultural factors in order to assess and provide appropriate care. As Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people suffer the same health problem as other. So according to Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, to achieve safe cultural environment, nurses must work together with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community, show them importance of healthy living to people with diabetic and how it gonna impact on their daily health through various awareness programs. As Socrates once says, awareness of one is ignorance of the foundation of the knowledge. Also, being nurse, he or she need to have knowledge of the historical and cultural background of Aboriginal Australian people in order to develop understanding of how these culture influence the people lives. This will bring positive results when you interact with them. Considering their cultural factor, they would feel they are valued, cared, and loved. The second things nurses must do is try to eliminate language barrier. Most of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people do not speak English as their first language. So in order to overcome such obstacles, nurses can follow general tips like use diagram, modules, image to explain concept, avoid using jargons, explain why you need to ask questions, and be careful while using traditional language or word unless you have excellent understanding of that. Along with that, in some situations, use of non-verbal skills like hand gesture, facial expression that are familiar among indigenous Australian people is important. Understanding ethical principles as talked in first point above is very important for any health professional to know about cultural background or patient or client they are looking after. Culture is very diverse. The values, beliefs, and attitudes continually modified as new situations arise. Hence, with whatever cultural background, individuals need to have understanding of their world. Here, the figures shown culturally awareness, cultural sensitivity, and cultural safety are related, showing the importance of principles, partnership, participations, and protections. Cultural awareness. Knowing the geographical conditions they live, their day to day activities, how they manage, their basic quality of life is vital. After knowing, we can teach them how they should be living to acquire quality life through awareness program and seminar to promote their culture. Cultural sensitivity. Being aware that people are not all same, accepting other culture while you don't belong to that very culture is a cultural sensitivity. This is the situation that nurses would be experiencing in every day of their work. In this case, nurse and patient both should understand and respect each other's characteristics. People who seamlessly adapt and interact with others from different cultures by following the norms of that cultures become more competent in their ability to communicate with people from another culture. To illustrate, to bow at right time when interacting with Japanese client or patient, or maintaining eye contact with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, as they believe eye contact is customarily gesture of respect. The final one, safe cultural environment. It's mainly focused on shared respect, shared cultures, and experiencing of learning together. Basically relates the actions and activities of nurses. Cultural safety cannot be achieved by the individual nurse and only can be influenced by the structure of the particular settings. It reminds us the importance of relationship and intent in healthcare. To provide safe care, nurses do treaty principles of partnership, protections, and participation. Nowadays, this is applied in everyday practice for nurse. Nurse explain, describe, and gain the consent to carry out work from patient rather than following other procedure. Following these principles create mutual understanding between nurse and Aboriginal Australian people as it's involved their consent, they feel they are being cared and looked after. In return, they will follow nurse advice. Most importantly, each one of them will be regarding one another culture. This kind of relation among nurse and patient will create a perfect environment to establish culturally safe community, nurturing one another culture hand in hand. Now, to summarize, our group gained knowledge about Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture and its impact on their health. Moreover, health promotions play a vital role in filling the gap of social determinant of health in remote communities that causes diabetes. And we learn how to deliver culturally appropriate and safe, effective care to achieve a better health outcome and well-being. Therefore, nurses should be culturally sensitive and aware of indigenous Australian cultural values and beliefs, which would not only prevent diabetes but promote health. That's end our presentation. Thank you.